A good morning. Yes, indeedy, I am back. I would like to say happy Saturday to everybody out there. I was going to talk about the Bachelor drama going on today, but it's pretty much the same old fight. Basically, the new drama with The Bachelor is a couple of people who follow the show are angry because basically there's no fat women on the show, right? And I'm actually surprised it took this long, right? I mean, maybe this has been kind of like that nagging voice that, oh yeah, of course it was. But no, I mean, seriously, maybe it was those kinds of people who just didn't have enough of a collective voice to really affect change. Although you would think by the nature of that issue, it would get, rectified before people had a chance to really examine it. But maybe, it's kind of like the voices that wanted to change the Redskins team name, just year after year after year, and then they finally got it. So anyway, I was going to talk about that. And but we had to call an audible because as I was up here browsing the news, and just to put a fine point on that, look, it's not necessarily about body shaming, right? Which is a stupid word. As it turns out, nobody's going to watch it if it's if it's a bunch of porkers out there. Unless it's some kind of food competition. I would watch that. It's TV, shit, and it's reality TV, so it's not going to be, whatever. All right. Now let's move to the topic for today, the topic that actually ousted this one just as I was coming to the line of scrimmage to start this podcast. We are going to talk about the newest nominee, or one of the new nominees for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. The nominee for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize that I am talking about is the Black Lives Matter movement. I've said this before. I've heard a lot of people say it. There is no satire anymore. Like, seriously, liberals have effectively killed satire. Because up is down, left is right, man is woman, good is bad, peace is violence. Apparently, right? All right, well, we're at the Guardian's website. Let's just jump on in here. Maybe I have the wrong impression. The title reads, Black Lives Matter Movement Nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. Norwegian MP cites global impact of BLM in raising awareness and consciousness of racial injustice. All right, I'm going to try my best to get through this article without editorializing after every sentence. I'm not going to try my best. I'm just going to do it. All right, so and then I'll try to find my way back to all the things that are going to piss me off as I read this, starting with that title. Okay, the Black Lives Matter movement has been nominated for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize for the way its call for systemic change has spread around the world. In his nomination papers, the Norwegian MP Peter Eide, or is it Eide? I don't know. Eide. Eide. I'm going to go with Eide. Said the movement has forced countries outside the U.S. to grapple with racism within their own societies. I find that one of the key challenges we've seen in America, but also in Europe and Asia, is the kind of increasing conflict based on inequality, Eid said. Black Lives Matter has become a very important worldwide movement to fight racial injustice. They have had a tremendous achievement in raising global awareness and and consciousness about racial injustice. Edie, who has previously nominated human rights activists from Russia and China for the prize, said one other thing that impressed him about the Black Lives Matter movement was the way, quote, they have been able to mobilize people from all groups of society, not just African Americans, not just oppressed people. It has been a broad movement in a way which has been different from their predecessors, end quote. The Black Lives Matter movement was co-founded in 2013 by Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi in response to the acquittal of the U.S. man who shot Trayvon Martin. It gained wider recognition in 2014 following the protest over the deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Garner, and was the wellspring of the series of global protests in 2020 following the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize are accepted from any politician serving at a national level, and they're allowed just 2,000 words to state their case. The deadline for this year's submission is 1 February, and by the end of March, the committee prepares a short list. The winner is chosen in October, and the award ceremony is scheduled for 10 December. There were more than 300 nominations from last year's award, which ultimately was won by the World Food Program. The committee awarded the World Food Program because it wanted to, quote, turn the eyes of the world to the millions of people who suffer from or face the threat of hunger, end quote. But perhaps the most high-profile nomination last year was former U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump was nominated for the second time by another Norwegian MP, Christian Tybring-Gjedde. The far-right MP, there we go, cited Trump's role in normalizing relations between Israel. Okay, all right, no, I'm going to get through it. The far-right MP cited Trump's role in normalizing relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates under the Abraham Accords. Although I'd said he had, quote, a little difficulty defending that nomination, end quote, after the Capitol riot of 6 January. When a pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Congress buildings and 5 people died. Ooh, coming back to that. I'd, however, said he didn't want his nomination for Black Lives Matter to be seen as a comment on domestic U.S. policies, and he dismissed criticism from right-wing voices that the group has been behind violence in U.S. cities. Oh, God, I'm really trying to get through this. I really am. Okay, we're almost there. Quote, studies have shown that most of the demonstrations organized by Black Lives Matter have been peaceful. The quotation continues. Of course, there have been incidents, but most of them have been caused by the activities of either the police or counter-protesters. Data assembled by the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project in September 2020 showed that 93% of Black Lives Matter demonstrations involved no serious harm to people or property. The 61-year-old politician who has represented the Socialist Left Party in Parliament since 2017 cited precedents of the Oslo-based Nobel Peace Prize Committee recognizing the battle against racism. Albert Luthuli and Nelson Mandela received the prize in 1960 and 1993, respectively, for advocating against racial discrimination in South Africa, and Martin Luther King was awarded the prize for nonviolent resistance and against racism in the U.S. in 1964. Mandela shared his award with F.W. de Klerk, the man who ordered the ANC leader's release from prison. There's actually a tradition for doing this. I'd said this is all a quote, I'm sorry. It's a strong linkage between anti-racism movements and peace, and a recognition that without this kind of justice, there will be no peace and stability in the society. His written nomination concludes, awarding the Peace Prize to Black Lives Matter as the strongest global influence against racial injustice will send a powerful message that the peace is founded on equality, solidarity, and human rights, and that all countries must respect those basic principles, end quote. End of article. We made it. Oh, God, we made it. We made it. But you know what? As I was reading, I was vindicated when I read that this man is a socialist. So honestly, that made me feel better. Because I'm like, okay, I shouldn't take anything this man says seriously. This man he doesn't understand that socialism is an inherently doomed system of government. But he still advocates for it. So, okay, despite all of the evidence disaccording to that, okay, that's fine. That actually made the rest of it. If they would have just led with that, I think I could have got through this with no problem. Because then I would have known not to take anything this man says seriously. But let's start from the beginning. This is part of my problem with the left, and you will all, and as most of you know who have been tuning in for a while, and as those of you who are newcomers, welcome, of course, welcome. But this is one of my major problems, is their ability to use language in such a non-specific, malleable kind of way, where anything could mean anything in any scenario. And along with that is the creation of just umbrella terms that have no meaning. Empty umbrella terms, like hate speech. What is hate speech? Because Robinhood got shut down based on hate speech, for all you people who've been following the GameStop thing. That's how they shut it down. They said what they were doing was hate speech. They shut them down on, Discord for hate speech. So... And only bring that up to demonstrate the empty umbrella term. So someone will have to define racial injustice as how it pertains to society now. All right, and we'll move forward. Look, as I kind of skimmed to find my places where I was just floored by some of the things that were said, I just want to say this overall. Does anybody else feel like everything that you thought was something as a kid or growing up is actually nothing? I mean, seriously, all these things that you were taught to kind of respect and, have some kind of reverence for and veneration for, such as the Nobel Peace Prize. And then you see that they're nominating a group that was violent, a violent group where people were killed, cities burned, buildings destroyed. The only thing more racist than not nominating them, even though they're violent, is not giving it to them, even though they don't deserve it. So, congratulations to Black Lives Matter for winning the Nobel Peace Prize. I wonder who will take it. I bet you know what? Does anyone want to take bets on who's going to receive it on their behalf? I bet you they'll have the VP receive it on their behalf. Why not? She's a woman. The people who created it are women. People of color, right? BIPOC. Why wouldn't they? Okay. Well, anyway, let's move forward. Let's see. Where was I first vexed by this? Let's go to his first quotation here. They have the ability to mobilize people from all groups of society, not just African Americans, not just oppressed people. It's been a problem from their predecessors. It has been different from their predecessors because their predecessors were actually nonviolent. Yeah, Martin Luther King, and I wouldn't even consider him a predecessor to this horseshit, by the way. And I think it's very disrespectful that people throw members of the actual civil rights movement in with these people. But that's the kind of thing that I've come to expect from white liberals, to be quite candid with you. Anyhow, and I love how the term African American is used. Look, I'm not even going to get started on that, how that's a stupid term, how it's an empty term in the way that it's used right now, okay? And the only purpose it serves is to remind you that you are not an American. If you're black, I don't know why you accept this. But you take African American. And then the other thing that's inherently racist about being called African American, white people aren't called European Americans, is which people will champion that. No, I am African. No, the fuck you're not. If you were born in these 50 states, somewhere in, you're not African American. I guess what? I can take that a bit further, actually. If you weren't born in fucking Africa, you're not African American. Sorry, you're not. There is a 10th generation, what do they call them down there? What do they call I don't know. There's a 10th generation blonde hair, blue eyed Elon Musk down there that is more African than you. That's good enough. Now, if you want to put a color on it because you're a Democrat and they teach you to put color on everything, all right, call yourself a black American. That's more accurate than African American. And then the other part about that is inherently just disrespectful that most people, I guess, don't seem to be able to pick up on. It's disrespectful because of how non-specific it is. What other group does that? Right? You talk to a white person who has Italian ancestry. You say, "Oh, you're European American, motherfucker. I'm Italian, motherfucker. I'm Sicilian, motherfucker. I'm French." My family's English. My family's Japanese. I'm Indian. I'm Peruvian. I'm Bolivian. I'm Colombian. There's no I'm South American. I'm Asian American. And the people who use those terms are usually outsiders to that group, right? Just like the people who came up with Latinx, outsiders to the group. Usually white people and almost exclusively liberal. But they're your friend. Anyway, let's move forward. Let's go to where they were to rescind the nomination of Donald Trump because of the Capitol riot on January 6th. Quote, I had a little difficulty defending that nomination after the Capitol riots on 6 January when a pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Congress buildings and 5 people died. So, Mr. Edie, did you have trouble with your BLM nomination, defending that? Because more than 5 people have died in the wake of their antics, in the wake of their violence, in the wake of them sieging cities. So did you have problems defending that nomination? Because a pro-BLM mob stormed Minneapolis? Because a pro-BLM mob stormed Philadelphia? Because a pro-BLM mob stormed Atlanta? Because a pro-BLM mob stormed Portland? Because a pro-BLM mob stormed Seattle? Because a pro-BLM mob stormed Kenosha? Did you have trouble defending it? Because a pro-BLM mob stormed, Nashville? Somewhere in Tennessee? Did you have trouble defending it then? See, so notice, and that's the thing about it, right? And I said that we need to just stop calling out the hypocrisy. At this point, I call it out, look, just to keep us sane. Because in these world where they're trying to tell you that up is down, and quite literally that men are women, and that good is bad, and that violence is peace in this case, it's important to recall, I think, out loud, the truth for your own sake. Because if you internalize the lie, you will begin to believe the lie. All right, let's move forward. Oh, God, yes. I'm so glad I saw this. I'd have been furious if I got off without addressing this. I'd, however, said he didn't want his nomination for Black Lives Matter to be seen as a comment on domestic U.S. politics. Well, that's the fact that group exists is a comment on domestic U.S. politics. So you nominating them only magnifies the comment on U.S. politics. So that statement actually makes no sense. I don't want my engagement to my girlfriend to be seen as a comment on how I feel about our relationship. Anyway, he dismissed criticism from the right-wing voices that the group had been behind violence in U.S. cities. Studies have shown... What studies? Boom. What studies? Please. Because there's one little piece of pseudo data that I'm going to get into after this, but there's no study actually cited here. And there's certainly not more than one. So whenever people do that, like, oh, it's on the internet. Yeah. Oh, people say. Studies have shown. Everybody knows. Have shown most of the demonstrators were peaceful. We all know that's bullshit because our eyes work. And that's basically the game that's being played right now, which is why I say you have to say the truth out loud. Because what is basically happening is we are all watching something happen, right? Let's say we are all watching a man paint a house red across the street. We're just sitting on a bench watching this happen. This man is just painting this house red by himself. While we're watching this, someone else comes up behind us, whispers in our ear, that woman is painting their house yellow. That woman is painting that house yellow. That woman is painting that house yellow. While you're watching a man paint a house red. That is basically the war being waged now that I've noticed. Is they're telling you that what you see is not what you see. Right? Remember fiery but peaceful? Mostly peaceful? People are dying. That's not peace. But they're telling you what you see is not what you see. And if you allow them to do that, if they break you that way, you are going to be screwed. I'll put it that way. You're going to be screwed because your brain at that point is just serves as almost like as some kind of a sub-automaton of their policies, of their politics, of whatever their whims are. If they can tell you that violence is peace and you accept that and you say, yeah, it was peace. Well, they can tell you anything. Any argument that is built on a lie, all points afterward must be assumed to be true. If you build an argument on a lie, every point you make subsequently has to be assumed to be true. So we all know that these were not peaceful protests. Of course, there have been incidents, most of them have been caused by activities of the police or counter-protesters. See, and I think this is Mr. Ide demonstrating this is certainly him demonstrating his ignorance, but I mean, this is him demonstrating his ignorance in terms of just not being aware of who's who in these groups, because those groups very rarely had any counter-protesters. The damage that was the violence that were caused by counter-protesters came from, wait for it, BLM and Antifa at Trump rallies. And I also like that he tried to blame the violence on the police, who were just standing there being pelted with shit. Who threw it? Did they throw it at themselves? Okay, so this whole thing is just one fabrication of just bullshit and lies and intentional manipulations and bastardizations of the truth. Okay, let's see here. Then he talks about Martin Luther King. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I forgot to tackle that piece of data that I said I was going to bring up. So yeah, here we go. In the very next sentence after, he was talking about the studies have shown, data assembled by the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project in September 2020 showed that 93%, and I want you to listen to this. This is the game they play. I've said this before. I'll say it again. You have to watch the words they use very carefully. So here we go. Data assembled by the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project in September 2020 showed that 93% of Black Lives Matter demonstrations involved no serious harm to people or property. I'll say again. 93% of Black Lives Matter demonstrations involved no serious harm to people or property. No serious harm. That's not nonviolence. No serious harm is trying to qualify or mitigate violence. Right? Because the premise of me saying it caused no serious harm is that there was harm caused to people or property. That's violence. So even the statistic he used to try to back up their bullshit, this author used in this article from The Guardian, even the statistic they cite is a lie in its intent. Right? Because its intent is to make you believe that 93% of the demonstrations were peaceful. That's what they want you to take away from that. But instead, they write 93% involved no serious harm to people or property. And if they're going to cherry pick that 93%, then it stands to reason that the other 7% were pretty fucking bad. So therefore, we can extrapolate that 100% of their protests involve violence, right? Because if there were any that involved no violence, I would assume they would cite it. Because why else would you lead with 93% involved no serious harm? If you had a 15%, a 20%, a 30% where were 100% peaceful. Why wouldn't you lead with that? You lead with what you got. Your best point. 93% of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations involved no serious harm to people or property. And who determines what serious harm is? Because if you burn my building down, if you burn my business down, or whether you throw a brick and knock off one of my rear view mirrors, one of my adjustable mirrors on the outside. Whether you do that, that's serious harm. Especially in the middle of a pandemic where people are not, especially in the middle of a pandemonium, where people are not allowed to work in certain places. So that statement, don't miss stuff like that. 93% involved no serious harm. But we got the Nobel Peace Prize nomination, ladies and gentlemen, and 100% of our protests are violent. And I'll say it, 100%. Fuck them. 100%. Okay. Here we are. Let's just close with this. There was a few more things that I probably could have pointed out, but I wanted to try to do it a different way because sometimes I feel bad about stopping after every couple sentences and throwing something in there. I think it makes it a little bit more arduous. But anyway, let's finish with this last quotation here. Awarding the Peace Prize of Black Lives Matter as the strongest global force against racial injustice will send a powerful message that peace is founded on equality, excuse me, solidarity, and human rights, and that all countries must respect those basic principles. Okay, very, very quickly. Number one, Black Lives Matter is the strongest global force against racial injustice. They're like the fucking super friends. They're the Justice League now, right? And first of all, what does a man from, where is he from? Norway. Let's pull up the demographics of Norway real quick. Because, it's always the people without kids that write the books that teach you how to raise your kids. All right, let's see here. Norway demographics. Yep, Norway racial demographics. Let's do that. Congratulations. But where is your ethnic makeup? This is from a site called theniche.com, places to live. Congratulations. It says Norway demographics. White, 87%. Hispanic, 13%. Now, math was not my strongest subject, but I think that's 100%. That seems a little too clean, so let's go to a different source here. Let's go to, I don't really like using Wikipedia because anybody could put anything in there. All right, let's do, there's a nice little index here. All right, birth rate, death rate, urbanization, sex ratio. That's interesting. Mother's mean age at first birth. That is a very interesting statistic. Take a guess. Mother's mean age at first birth for Norway. It's 29. That's not bad. All right, let's see here. The ethnic group doesn't really get me where I want to go. It just says 83% of them are Norwegians by birth. 8.3% are some other kind of European. And the big other is an 8.5%. All right, well, we can't really... This hasn't been very successful in trying to find... There we go. Let's just be more blunt. Percentage of black people in Norway. Okay, this has it at somewhere around 4%. That seems more realistic than 0% from the other thing. So I'll include both of these. Really, these are just basic Boolean searches in the Bing search engine that you can do. So there's really no need to cite it. Just punch it in. But anyway, it's always the people who really have no experience. You ever notice that? It's like the people who... like I said, the people who don't have kids that write the books teaching you how to raise yours. Calling them a global force against injustice, like, all right. But it belabors the point, right? Because this whole thing is just a fawning fabrication of lies and bullshit. So to kind of point it out at this point, I guess it's a little redundant. This last little piece and we'll be done. We'll send a powerful message that peace is founded on equality, solidarity, and human rights. Peace is founded on all of those things. I agree with the second one more than any of the others. The truth of the matter is violence is founded on the push for equality. Violence is founded on the push for solidarity in some cases. And violence is founded on human rights, for sure. Okay? So maybe we need to kind of divorce ourselves from this romanticized, utopic ideal of peace and what it really means. Of what the cost of all these things are. Peace is not founded on them. Violence is founded on them because those are all struggles. Equality is a struggle. Human rights, that is a struggle. All of these things have inherent struggles. Human rights is because I was born, I can do this, and you have to respect it. Which we should talk about human rights, because I don't know how I feel about it anymore. I don't know how I feel about the idea of human rights, because what it's really being used now to do is to allow certain people to oppress others. It's actually the opposite of what it's supposed to be. That is amazing. But just wrapping it up really quickly, I'm sorry, we're over our 30, but it's very interesting, this notion that peace is founded on all of these things when all of these things involve a struggle. But then again, this is a man who's awarding the Peace Prize to a group that burned down buildings. So, okay, that's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Flush your Nobel Peace Prize respect down the crap. Seriously, man, what else? What else are we going to destroy? The CDC is horseshit now, as far as I'm concerned. Once they said white supremacy was the number one, it's like a number one public health risk or whatever they said last year in the middle of the George Floyd mania. It reminded me of like that story from the Old Testament where the ghost comes to kill everybody. So everybody, the story of Passover. So in order to not get killed by the ghost, they put the blood on their door. That's what last year was. When the George Floyd ghost went around, when the BLM ghost went around destroying businesses, 2021 Nobel Peace Prize winner, when they went around destroying businesses, everybody had to throw the blood up. Well, we love black people. All Black Lives Matter. White supremacy is the number one carcinogen in America. Yep. Did you know that white supremacy kills more people than cigarettes, guns, and drunk driving combined per capita in America? So as everybody scrambled to cover themselves in the blood of George Floyd, I just started to keep tally of all these things. The Associated Press capitalizing the letter B in black. I have no respect for these organizations anymore. And these are all things you grew up respecting. And one by one, we're seeing them all crumble. New York Times, don't get me started. Now for some places, the fall wasn't as great. CNN, that wasn't a terrible fall. Like, it wouldn't be a Life Alert commercial, but, it was a fall nonetheless. The NFL, all the king's horses and all the king's men. I don't know. Sports in general, right? You can throw all the sports in there. But, I kind of expect that from sports because they're heavily dominated by black people. And a lot of those people, and look, I'm just going to shoot you straight. A lot of those people are very emotional. And I think it's because a lot of them grew up with just the mom. So they function in a very emotional way. They function in a very feminine way. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for you today. No fat bitches on The Bachelor. And, hey, if you want to win a Nobel Peace Prize, I guess you have to burn down the city. All right. Well, until then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not even going to end with the word peace. You know what? Fuck it. They fucked it all up. I can't even end with the word peace today. I can't even end with the word peace. I guess we'll end with the man who has ruined all of this, because I can't even say his name anyway. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Appreciate all of you. So until the next time, Edie.